Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Drum video tutorials. In this episode, we're going to get into the basics of creating beats with a Dr. Drum application. Now that you've activated your copy of Dr. Drum, let's take a minute to get to know the Dr. Drum software interface. The first thing you'll want to notice is that the application has a built-in help button that will display some useful tips if you find yourself in need of a little guidance. We'll go over all of that info in this tutorial, so don't worry about reading it for now. It will always be there when you need a refresher later on. Let's start with a basic overview of the different areas of the beat-making window. The main section here is the Arrange area, where you will manage your tracks and lay out your beats. Below that is a toolbar with all of your important controls and beat editing tools. We'll talk more about the toolbar items in just a minute. Above the Arrange tracks, there are 3 instrument buttons that will assign instrument types to your Arrange tracks. These also open the instrument subscreen, which is where you'll create and edit your beats in greater detail. We'll dive into the instrument subscreens later on in the demo. Above that is your audio mixer, where you can mix and shape the tone and volume of all of your instrument tracks to polish and craft a great sounding beat. You'll notice that there are 16 individual mixer channels that correspond to your 16 Arrange tracks. There's also a master volume fader to control the overall sound level of your project. Here in the top right corner are some additional helper buttons to make the Dr. Drum window full screen and hide the background windows, giving your project window better focus. You can see I'm using those features right now. There's also a button to upload your beats straight to YouTube, and a few other menu buttons to access Dr. Drum tips and extra features. Rather than going through every single button and tool in monotonous detail, let's just start making some beats. We'll learn about all the tools along the way as we need them. The first thing you want to do is add a beat region to one of your Arrange tracks. Using the pencil tool, just click anywhere on an empty Arrange track. You'll see a gold box appear on the track. This box is a beat region, which is a container that holds all of your actual rhythm and beat pattern information. Don't worry if this seems a bit confusing right now, it should all become clear by the end of the tutorial. Once you've drawn your first beat region, you'll need to choose what instrument you want to use with that region and Arrange track. We can choose from a selection of drums, basses, and keyboards, but let's start with drums and get a simple beat going. While the beat region is still highlighted, as you'll notice by the white outline around the box, click on the Drums button. This assigns a drum instrument to that track and region, and takes you inside of the beat region. Since the beat region is now on a drum track, it also automatically opens up the drum instrument subscreen. The instrument subscreens are where you'll be spending most of your time creating and editing actual beats and rhythms. There is a similar subscreen each for drums, bass, and keyboards, which we'll see later on. Just like in the main screen, there is a built-in help button that brings up some useful tool tips to help you find your way around. On the left, you have your SoundKit browser list. A sound kit is simply a collection of sounds that make up your instrument, be it various drums and percussion hits, bass samples, or keyboard sounds. Exploring and getting to know the vast array of sounds available to you in the Dr. Drum app is part of the fun and creative process, so take your time experimenting with all of the different sound kits. I'm just going to choose a random kit to get started. You'll see when I choose a kit, the individual sounds pop up in the sound sequencer area. Each drum kit includes 12 different sounds, and each horizontal track in the sequencer area represents just one of those unique sounds. You can see this kit has some kick drums, snare sounds, closed and open hi-hats, and other various percussion. I can click the sound labels to quickly audition them. I can also audition the sounds using the drum pads at the top of the screen, as well as adjust the playback volume of each of the individual drum sounds using the mini faders next to the pads. Let's put these sounds into a beat. Using the pencil tool, I'm going to literally draw in some sounds on the sequencer timeline. Each gold box here represents a moment that sound will play back in time. I'm not going to get into a complex discussion on musical rhythm, bars, and timings in this tutorial, Besides, it's just as easy to hear how it all comes together. So now that we've drawn in some beats, let's click play to play it back. Easy, right? While we're here, let's take a second to go over the playback controls. First, click the close button in the top right of the screen to exit the drum subscreen and go back to the main Dr. Drum window, where it will be easier to see how these playback controls work. There's really no big mystery to the playback controls, as they essentially do exactly what they say, playing, stopping, and pausing the playback of your beat. You'll notice as I press play, a vertical yellow line scrolls across the arranged tracks. That's your playback indicator, also called a playhead, keeping track of your progress along the project timeline. Clicking the pause button will pause the track, and clicking play will resume playback right from where the playhead left off. When clicking the stop button, the playback will restart from the very beginning of the project. The back button will also jump the playhead back to the start of your project. Normally, the beat will play through once and stop at the end of the track. Clicking loop will turn on looping playback, where your beat will automatically repeat when it reaches its end. Notice when looping is enabled, two blue vertical loop indicators appear over the arrange area. You can drag the blue loop lines to set the start and stop point of the looping playback. Using these, you can set the project to loop an individual section or the entire project. Clicking loop again will turn off loop mode. Let's keep looping on and go back into our drum region. Now that we've got a loop region set up, I can click play and hear it play back over and over while I draw in new beats. I'm just going to start adding some simple instruments and rhythms. Also, if you're having difficulty feeling the rhythm, turning on the metronome can help get you on track. Once you've set a basic pattern, you probably won't need the metronome anymore. If I don't like what I've created, I can easily edit the beats using the Move and Erase tools. There, that sounds pretty good. Now that my beat is taking shape, I can also play around with the sound kit selection. Clicking on another instrument will load up a new set of sounds to the tracks that play along based on the rhythm I already have sequenced. This lets me easily audition different sound kits to find the best samples for my specific project, and tweak the beat itself along the way. Let's stop here and add a bass line to go along with the beat. Closing the drum subscreen, I'm going to take the pencil tool again and create a new beat region. Since I already have drums on my first track, I'm going to draw the region on track number 2. While this new region is still highlighted, I'll click the bass button this time to assign it a bass instrument and enter into the bass subscreen. You'll notice this subscreen is very similar to the drum subscreen. As always, there is a built-in help button to guide you around the important areas. The main difference here, and similarly in the keyboard subscreen, is that instead of 12 tracks of assorted drum sounds, there are 4 octaves of a piano keyboard, also called the piano roll. You don't really need to know much about playing piano, and we're not going to get into any music theory here, but essentially the way the piano roll works is that each horizontal line represents a different pitch or note of the bass or keyboard instrument. Let's just take a listen to get a better idea. After selecting a bass instrument from the SoundKit browser, you can audition it by clicking on any of the piano keys. Notice the higher keys give you a higher note, and as you go lower, the note also gets lower. If you don't know much about pitch and melodies, just draw in a few notes and see how it sounds. You can always erase or move the notes later on. Let's click play to start up our looping rhythm and see if we can't come up with a nice bass line. Just like with the drum instrument, while the song is playing, I can create and edit my melody on the fly. That's sounding pretty good. Now, let's go back to the main screen and check out some other essential beat-making features. You may have noticed the beats per minute selection box in the lower left corner of the window. The BPM sets the tempo for your song, where a lower BPM gives you a slower beat, and a higher BPM makes a more fast-paced tune. Simply type in any value and press enter to set the project's beats per minute. 120 is the default BPM value, and is a good place to start if you don't know how fast or slow you want to go. Typical tempos might range from 100 BPM for a more laid-back beat, to 140 BPM, which will get your heart pumping. As you can see, you can always change the BPM at any time while working on your beat. At this point, you'll definitely want to save all of your hard work, and maybe even export a music file to share with your friends and fans. The buttons at the bottom right of the application window let you do just that. First, I'm going to save my beat project so I can come back and work on it more later on. Dr. Drum project files have the extension .xml. Once it's saved, I can even email my project file to a friend so that they can open it up and remix it in their own copy of Dr. Drum. The Export Wave button will create a high-resolution audio file that anyone can listen to. These exports can also be burnt to CD, uploaded and shared on SoundCloud, or synced to your smartphone or portable music player. That's all for this tutorial. Next time, we'll dive into some of the more advanced beat-making features. Feel free to visit the Dr. Drum members area for more information and tutorials, and thanks for watching!